All right. Hello, everybody, and happy Monday to all of you out there. I don't know if it's a happy Monday to all of you because it is the day before the election. So I thought today would be a great day for us to just have a fun and relaxing coffee chat. So joining me today from Berlin is my friend Holger Zimmer. Buongiorno. I know it's Guten Tag, right?
Guten Tag, guten Abend. Hello there. Good to see you folks.
So Holger has been a colleague of mine for, gosh, a long time, many, many years. I think I met you, maybe more than 10 years ago. You
I'd
have,
say so, yeah. 10 years,
yeah.
something like this. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're a tour guide, you do local guiding in Berlin, but you're also a radio personality, right?
Yeah. That's what my main job back in Berlin is. I'm a radio producer, editor, reporter. So I'm always out for cultural issues like what's the next thing coming up? What's the next exhibition in the museum? Who's visiting? What kind of musicians? So I go to shows and the next morning that's a cool job. Like I go to see Neil Young or Leonard Cohen. Then the next morning, 7 a.m. and I'm in the studio and I tell the listeners what the concert was like. And it's a nice thing. So it gets me interested, gets me up on my toes, and I'm always more or less clued in what's happening in Berlin and around.
So I've talked to people all over the world about what's going on with COVID and all of that, but I haven't talked to anybody in Germany. So what's going on in Berlin right now?
I think, like everywhere, mixed feelings. Actually, today is the first day of the what they call the second lockdown. So we had, of course, like the whole big shutdown of things and enterprises and businesses and everything in spring, and now as the numbers are rising everywhere, um, government has decided we need another like a month of complete minimization of any contact. So schools are still
Oh.
open and kindergartens and everything, but everything else, cultural life, that's okay. In shops, shopping is always what you can do more or less, but no theaters, no museums, no concerts, no meetings, no philharmonic. Like everything is basically just down, and so people are, of course, as you can imagine, not very happy with it. But then again, knowing what my colleagues, my friends are going through in Italy or Spain, where let's say the limitations, or France, the limitations are much, harsher and more confined. I think we still have kind of room to breathe, even though it doesn't feel that great. And I was so happy that I had my last concert yesterday. I had, before the whole thing ended, I had another concert that I could actually go to attend in a big theater, in a real nice theater. So every second row was gone, every second seat was free, like actually two seats next to each other. So everyone had their space. But it was a wonderful singer, pop musician from Switzerland, and she always puts in amazing performances, which was weird with little people in the big theater, but it was live energy, and I hope I can sustain that feeling, that energy, until hopefully December things will open up again.
So is that the plan so far? Is that they're going to shut down for November?
That's they plan it for November, and I mean, we'll see whether December opens up again or not. It still remains to be seen, but for the time being, they plan it for like a whole month, and then hopefully gradually open up again.
So are you able to go out for dinner or are
Oh,
restaurants?
restaurant, everything's closed. No restaurants,
Everything's
no
closed.
bars, nothing, completely closed. I mean, shops, yes, you can kind of go and grab a bite or like order a meal and take out, but no more sitting inside, no restaurants, no food, nothing other than the takeaways or deliveries.
Wow. Yep.
So yeah, social life. I mean, I was there after the concert, still completely, hyped up from this wonderful live energy, and I wanted to get just a glass of red wine on my way home. But hey, it was 11 o'clock. Curfew is already introduced for some while now, so no more alcohol, no more serving. That's that for November. So we'll see. Let's talk in a month.
Well, I guess it's the time for you to like write that novel you've always wanted to write, right?
Yes, I'm kind of on poems now. Let's do the smaller portions. Poems are always good for a little, kind of like exercise of the mind. But yeah, things will come. It's surely sparks creativity. Yes.
So what is the feeling of everybody in Germany about the election tomorrow? What are you hearing?
I would say, I mean, let's say we're all connected, and whatever happens in America will, of course, affect Europe, affect Germany. So everyone is looking over to see what's going on. And my job as a radio journalist, I just did a radio piece. I asked a lot of American expats who are actually living in Berlin, doing music, musicians, theater people, performers, entertainers, or even how do you call it? Playwright? No, the script writers. Yeah. So Anna Winger, for example, she's the script writer of Deutschland 83. I don't know, it's an interesting series about German history, Germany 83, 86, like quite a cool history. I've made it out in the international circles. You can watch it. And so I talked to all of these people just to get a feel how they're, talking with folks back home, how they're seeing that. And there was some, let's say, bleak visions, but a lot of them were hopeful. They said, listen, my sister, she went there, she saw the people in line, she bought everyone water for those waiting in line to be able to vote, and the turnout that we see, what is it, 67 70 millions already have voted, so a very much higher percentage of people actually voting already before the actual election, I think makes us all hopeful that there are people who say, listen, let's really pull our weight and let's maybe make a change. And I think the world needs a change for the better.
I think that change would be nice. We'll see. We certainly can't continue on the way we are so far. So
and that's in every country. Absolutely. That's what we see. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, since you can't really go anywhere, I mean, what are German people doing for social life? You just talk on the internet, or are people getting together in squares, or how are they social?
Yeah, I think squares are also out now from today onwards. So no more sitting in a park or so together. So yesterday was a very balmy night. So still people were out till late at night. I think we still can somehow meet on a very limited basis, like maybe 2 people together, and that's kind of it. So I do still meet friends over time, like one-on-one with a little distance, and I just said goodbye to a good friend who spends his winters in Mexico, and we sat on a park bench in the sun apart from each other and waved goodbye, So yes, there is still, of course, I mean, let's face it, internet is fine. And I do a lot of my time is spent on team meetings, on Zoom meetings, on work. My radio colleagues I hardly ever see. We talk on the computer. That's what we do. How to structure the next program. What's the plan for the next day? So that's reality. But if we can, yes, a little meeting would be good. And I had the luck. There was Halloween. It's not a big thing really in Germany, but it's coming. It's getting more bigger. And I had the pleasure to be invited to a Halloween party on Saturday, and so I just went down to Leipzig, which is an interesting, the city where the revolution, the peaceful revolution in Germany started, basically in '89. But we basically just sat around a campfire, like a little, like these fire tons that you see from kind of American ghetto movies. We had one of those, and just kind of had spaced out, lots of space in between, all out in the open by the fire, and just had very good conversations about life, love, future, and the rest of the world, just sitting by the fire and watching the flames. And that was like a very communal feeling that I enjoyed very much. So I think that it's probably not allowed anymore as of from today, but probably people will find ways to meet each other.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to do something. You can't not. You have to do something about the crisis, but you also have to stay sane, which I think is really the big problem right now.
Yes, and I think, yeah, human warmth is what we need, somehow, and the best, at least when you are face to face, looking at each other is I think the minimum thing you should be doing. Yes.
Yeah.
We knew now. I mean, we're far apart. You're over in the West Coast. I'm back in Berlin, but we can look at each other, and other people are there with us. So thanks for joining us, and hope you can join into the conversation at some point.
Well, and we always have great conversations. We were supposed to start at 10, but we ended up talking for 20 minutes before we started. I know it's not the same as actually sitting in the same room with you and having a glass of wine and chatting, because there are certain things that you miss. But on the other hand, I mean, it's not that bad.
Absolutely. And we've known each other for a little while. So whenever, it's screen or just the voice, for me, that's so amazing. What I like, I mean, I'm a radio guy, so I work with voices, with sounds, with, and just the sheer fact, how much modulation, how much, let's say, intimate mood you can actually transport by sound alone. I mean, back in the day when we did not have the video call and the Zooms and the FaceTime and what have you, you had a phone and you call up your friend, maybe after a month or so, an old friend of you, and just by the sheer fact that he or she would just pick up the phone and say hello, you'd immediately know what kind of mood they were in. And that's what I found so fascinating, that the voice just transports everything you need. So I'm happy to see and hear you, Sarah. It's good.
Isn't it interesting though? I mean, I feel like there are certain people that when I hear their voices, I mean, you can text people all the time, and I'm a writer, so I can write very long, thoughtful messages to people, but there is this like physical response you get when you hear the voice of somebody
Yeah,
that you really care about. You know, it's like all of a sudden you're just like, oh, it's like a warm sweater somehow. It's a very comforting to
that's
hear the voice. So I
that's
don't
it.
know.
Absolutely.
I lament this with my son, who's a teenager, and he's always on, his phone, and they just chat. Yeah, he's just chatting with people. And I just think, I say, oh, why don't you just have a friend over? Why don't you go for a walk or something? But it's always like, oh, no, we're fine on text messages. And I think, but you miss so much. There's such a human connection from being either present with somebody or at the very least hearing their voices. And one of the funniest things my kids don't understand about when I was their age, I hate saying that, when I was your age, but did you ever, maybe you had a different childhood than I do, but when I was 14, 15, it was super cool to have your own phone in your bedroom. But if you
Because you
couldn't,
needed it. Yes.
yeah, you needed it. But if you couldn't have that, what you did is you bought this long, stretchy cord to the family phone,
Yes.
and you
Yes.
plug it in, and then you go and like shut yourself in a closet with the phone.
And you'd be there for like hours talking to your best friend. I know the exact feeling. Just wanted to bring that up. That's what it is. And you just like, and then after 2 hours, maybe the father would go like, Sarah or Holger, can you please come out now? We need the phone, right? But hey, for you, it was the time you were there and you had the connection. That's true. So yeah, tell your kids how to use a proper phone. It's
I
hard these
know,
days.
yeah. It's like the texting is actually not that great. And it's not a good way to carry on a relationship. I think it's so much better to actually get that voice and getting that
Yeah,
connection. So,
yeah.
so what led you to radio? I'm just thinking about like all these things that I've never actually asked you, and I don't know why I've never asked you that. What led you? How did you start out in radio?
Yeah, actually, maybe it's this point about the sound, about the voices. So I remember back when I was like, I don't know, like 8 or 9 years old, we had a little like a portable kind of tape recorder, and we did our own radio plays, right? So you just play the record button, had a tape in, and then we do like, you bang on things and you do this, you do little sounds and you invent stories about a murder or about this monster or whatever, just little kind of kids stories or a mystery. I was reading all this Enid Blyton, these British novels about these kids doing amazing like adventures, and they're kind of detectives in their own right and that kind of stuff. So I think it started by listening to radio as a kid. There was like a talk radio show every Sunday with a kind of weird guy, Manfred Sechsauer. He was like complete eclectic music mixed with like sketches and weird jokes in between. I think I listened to my first Frank Zappa when I was probably 7 or so, by this guy. And so that kind of drew me in, and then doing my own radio plays. And then later on, I studied theater and English literature. And I kind of never really knew like, what do I want to do in life in a way. And I dabbled a bit in theater, which was great, but it was very tough going, to kind of try to break into the theater, and not as an actor or a director, more like a dramaturg, kind of more behind the scenes, working with texts and stuff. So that's what I did for a while. But then I thought like, I love the radio. So I applied for radio. And before applying, I actually did a couple of internships, right? These unpaid things that you do in life at some point. And I went to the Hörspielabteilung. And Hörspiel, which is it's called the Hear Play, which is your word for radio drama. So fictitious radio plays, radio stories. And that's what I did for a couple of months in different stations. And then I landed this Volontariat. That's a special sort of training on the job that the radio stations do. It's like a broadcasting education. So you are paid for like 1.5 years, and you learn the trade from day one to day zero. So really like you start from scratch, learning how to write news, learning in different radio waves and different stations. And then basically I kind of drifted from the radio play, from the fictional character side, more towards hard-hitting journalism, more the factual, fact-based things. But that's what I've been doing for 20 years now. That's my heart, my heartfelt job, and working with, yeah, sounds, music, crafting the stories, going out into the world with where's my mic? Here's my, you can see my little mic that I use for interviews. So I just put it, and that's for me, it's great because I'm a curious guy. I want to know things. So I just have the, this wonderful job where I can actually go up to people and say, listen, Patti Smith, why did you write this book? And I just have the mic, and then she tells me what I want to hear, or something else that I never dreamed of. And that's basically, what I do for a living, and it can get my curiosity going and my interest in the world, what's happening. And whenever I travel, I have my equipment with me, because it's not like you need a big camera crew and big equipment and tons of people. No, I myself, I have a mic, I have a recorder. That's all I need, and then I can go out and I can tell you stories about the singing revolution in the Baltic states, or I go biking with a friend in St. Petersburg in Russia, and I do a radio story about how it is to go explore St. Petersburg on a bike, or St. Petersburg on a rooftop, all these things. And I bring the stories back and I craft them and I produce them, and then they go out into the world. And if I'm lucky, some people listen to it and they maybe get a kick out of it. That's kind of what it is. So long story, I think really going back to my childhood as listening, trying to hear. And I think that's what it is. That's what radio was for me as a kid. There was no internet, there was no nothing. There was maybe the big encyclopedia books in my parents' shelf. But if you turn on the knob and you listen, the whole world opens up to you. And that's what radio was for me. And that's what I try to somehow relive too.
So what kind of stories then do you do? I mean, do you have the radio show that you work on? Does it have a particular topic like culture, arts, or music? Or do you just do stories about whatever fascinates you?
More or less, that's kind of what I try, because whatever floats my boat, I think maybe the listeners might like it too. But yes, the general gist of my station, I work for all of the different stations within Germany. We have like a network, kind of like maybe like NPR in a way, that have different, different stations too, kind of syndicated, if you wish, or like the BBC. So every major city in Germany, Berlin, Hamburg, Cologne, Munich, they have their own broadcasting station, and each of them has their own like 3 or 4 different radio waves. And I work for quite a number of them. My main is in Berlin, called RBB, Radio or Rundfunk Berlin Brandenburg, because it's this whole region. And my station is called RBB Kultur. So basically a full-blown culture radio with the focus on classical music as the musical kind of music feast there. But interspiced in between are these topics, are these people like me going out doing a report on, like, for example, nowadays we have a lot of talks about how does an opera cope with the COVID situation? How can they actually do rehearsals when the singers have to be like far away and all of that? So these kind of things. So basically it is a broad range of arts and culture that for me ranges from like a punk rock concert to the Berlin Philharmonic or the Jazz Fest that's actually opening on Thursday. So if you want to check out jazz, you can go online, because there's no visitors allowed this year anyway. So anyone can go and get your ticket and view it online. So these kind of things. So I would be, of course, in the Jazz Fest, in the venues, talking to people, getting vox pops, talking about what is this year edition of the Jazz Fest like, and, what are the performers that you like, and is the program any good, that kind of thing. So it's a broad range. My main focus, I think, for me is music and photography. That's are the 2 topics that I really care about, and always report on over the years. But in general, it really is arts and culture, and that is for me just like a nice bed to lie in, because Berlin is the capital of art for Germany, and I'm here. And any artist who wants to promote his new record will come to Berlin, and hey, believe it or not, I'll be waiting for him with my mic, and let's have a chat. That's the thing that I've been doing for 20 years now.
Wow, that's fun. And I mean, this is very similar to what I do too these days. And I've never actually considered how fun it is to just talk to people and draw out their stories, So I
The
suppose,
conversation, and you're right. Yeah. And just, see and hear how these stories evolve, right? That's quite amazing. I like that.
yeah, I mean, because really, that every person walking, the way I look at it is every person I know has an interesting story to tell. It's just how you get them to tell the story, because not everybody's just going to automatically tell you the things. So you have to kind of decide what it is that you need to ask them and to try and get that stuff out. So that's really cool.
Research is the bread and butter for the thing, of course. You have to know who you're talking to before you meet them. but that's always quite cool because it really seems to be the case that some people just go in and say, okay, here's your new record, tell me three things about it, and they say, well, what's the story here? So of course, I mean, that's you prepare before that. You listen to the record, you try to think, what does it, how does it speak to you? What are the things that kind of your imagination is sparked by the record or by the book that you talk about, and then you have things to work on, and then a conversation comes out. And let's face it, more or less, I do pieces that are between, let's say, 4 minute long or half an hour to an hour long. That are the long, radio docs or feature, as we call them. But I cannot just go. I mean, I need little sound bites from the people that I need the stories from, or that I meet, right? And so I need a 20-second soundbite here, a 20-second soundbite there. But for me, I cannot work like going, okay, 3 bullet points, can you please and go. No, I mostly do at least an hour conversation with someone, and
Yeah.
then I have to narrow it down and to see what is the essence here, what is the undertones, what is the, how do you call it, the innuendo, maybe is what you say, like
Nuance.
this.
Nuance.
Yeah, the nuances. Yeah, exactly. So and but that's the beauty of it. I wish I could work faster and more efficient, but that's not me. I want to have a connection with the people that I meet, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, I learn from the artists. If I talk to someone like Andrew Bird, it's just like you have an artist in front of you. That's not just a musician who has another record. There's someone who creates a world in every single song he writes. And that's the beauty of it. And then, yeah, and you can really, draw a lot from it. Yeah.
So who's the most memorable person that you've done a piece on? Like the person who affected you the most in that conversation?
I think I have to say, just on the top of my head, a wonderful guy, a photographer. Um, Let me just conjure up the name. Clemens Kalischer. Clemens Kalischer. He was of German origin, went over to the States, of course, with the whole Holocaust, with the whole persecution. And he was pretty old when I met him first. He had an exhibition in a beautiful small little gallery, Argus Fotokunst in Berlin, highly recommended. And he was probably in his late 70s or 80s. And he had this massive body of work, and he made wonderful photo series, working for the magazines in America and at the Times and all of these things, but always freelance. And he told me, you know what, Holger, I never looked for commissions or looked for pieces that other people told me to do. I looked for what I wanted to do. I looked for the topics that interested me, and I went out with my camera, and I was part of this scene, of this story, and then the stories evolved, and then maybe I would sell them later on, or they became more, published, or they became known. But the starting point was never an editor telling me, here, go out, do this. The point was always, I have an idea that I want to follow. And that to me was so inspiring, because yes, I mean, we all struggle with this idea of like, can you be independent? How can you um, make a living from what you do and what you care about? But he was so charming and adamant and so straight in his approach that, hey, that's what I did all my life, and that's how I liked it, and I never regretted it. And that, I think that Clemens Kalisch, he unfortunately passed away recently, a wonderful man with a wonderful body of work.
Hmm. Well, and I think that's a really nice perspective. I mean, I feel that too, especially at this point in my life, that like what would be fantastic is just to go chase those ideas, chase those stories, those people, and really, I mean, this is kind of what I'm doing now, which is to
You
just
are, yes.
think about the people that I know and the stories. I mean, I feel like that's been one of the greatest gifts of my life, is that I have been exposed to so many people and so many cultures and all of the different conflicting but intertwining stories between people from disparate parts of the world. It's just, I feel like I have such an interesting lens on the world that it's interesting as somebody who wants to interview and kind of bring this stuff together, to figure out how do you select those little threads and how do you put them together in a way that makes sense. So
what I like being, connected to you, Sarah, is that, I always have the feeling you don't only know a lot of amazing people around the globe, but what also is amazing, you bring them together to really kind of, how is it, to elevate mm, mm, their presence. No, maybe that's too esoteric. Let me put it the other way. You give room, and people can grow with that, and that's quite amazing. That's what I really I'm really happy and thankful for.
Well, I think I just see that there's room for everybody. And what I think is, what I see in all the people that I know, especially people who are our colleagues, for example, or people that I've
Hmm.
met in my work, is that everybody has a seed of something special.
Hmm.
But it's like, has that seed been fertilized? Has that seed been watered? Has that seed been put into the sun? And if you give people the tools to express themselves and give them the tools to find their voice, amazing things can happen. And there's just so much opportunity out there if you give people a platform and let them go. I
Hmm.
mean, just with the Guide Collective stuff, I've been stunned by the people that have just really embraced finding their voice. And then
Yeah,
that,
the amazing talent there is. Yeah.
yeah, it's just cool. But it's not just limited to our group. I mean, I just feel like everybody that I've met in my work, there are just so many people that have something interesting to say.
Hmm.
And yeah, you just got to give them a space to say it. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
very.
it's a great platform to really share the stories that we all have, like across the board. All these people who have been working and roaming the. I mean, let's face it. I think for us as like tour guides as a job, we're not tour guides because we want the nice life. Somehow we're tour guides because we're curious about the world, and that brought us to travel in the first place. And that eventually, I mean, I think I put my thumb out hitchhiking across Europe like when I was like 18, 19. That's what I did. And there was no ever a single thought that I would do this for a living at some point, or sharing this passion and the knowledge of the places and the histories with others. It was just like, because I wanted to see the world. I wanted to go to Russia when it was still Russia. I wanted to go to the southern part of Poland where my dad was from, like he was born, and then they had to move, these kind of things, like, or go down to the tip of Sicily or something. Like, when you're young, you just want to explore. And that's, if you keep on with this, then it just can turn into a wonderful, yeah, fabric of experiences that are too precious to just keep to yourself. I think that's the idea.
Yeah, it is. And there's so much beauty out there to be experienced. And I think that especially with our jobs as guides, it's that our job is just to let people know about that maybe you never considered how complex and interesting this corner of the world is that just has never been a part of your
Yeah.
you know consciousness. So, which actually leads me to another question I don't know why I've ever
Mm.
asked you. I've never asked you, how did you become a guide? Because you're a radio guy. Like, why did you become a tour guide also?
Funny, actually, through a journalist connection, right? So I have been on a journalist exchange program. I actually spent quite a time in Belfast in Northern Ireland working on the peace process, writing radio stories about what role theater plays in how the communities, Protestant and Catholic, coming together, how there's common ground, how the different peace initiatives kind of work, and how hard they actually struggle in this very dense conflict of the Northern Ireland, the Troubles, right? So I went to work with the BBC for a while and brought my home stories back home to my home station back home in Berlin. And it was called IJP, International Journalist Programs. And when I came back, there was like an alumni meeting at some point. I was at a party and all these journalists, meet and talk about their job and stuff. And I meet this guy, and he's now a very good friend of mine, one of my really top friends, Gabriel Fawcett. He's an amazing guide, but he was back then, he was a historian working for the BBC, who just came to live in Berlin because he just didn't want to live in London anymore in this grind mill of the BBC and the newsroom. So he changed career, became a tour guide, and we met in his kind of process of moving from journalist to tour guiding, and we became friends. And at some point he said, "You know what, Holger, I think I have a job for you. There's this person I work for in America, and I think they need someone to do a tour, and I think you can do it." And I said, "I don't know. I mean, I love traveling, but do you think I should, like, I don't know. What do I do?" like 30 people on the bus. What do I tell them? So I had no clue whatsoever about what to do and how to do it. And the good thing is, I was jumping right in, and he through his contacts, he got me the job. My first ever tour, probably I'd say 12 years ago, 13 years ago, something like this. A family tour, family members from the United States coming to Germany, meeting their relatives in Germany, and then traveling to Amsterdam, to the north of Germany, and then to the little village in where the ancestors had come from. So it was quite a tour, reaching 20 to odd people, like gatherings. And Sarah, I think there's yeah, you're back here. Good. So yeah, that's really the short answer.
Oh, we're having a few technical difficulties, it seems. Are you there, Holger?
Okay, I got to do this for a second.
Oh, you're back. You're back.
Back. Ah, good. That's good. Yeah, because I'm in the back room here in the back of the house, so sometimes the connection is quite bad. Yeah, but by chance, I became a tour guide, and I love it ever since, because it is combining what I love, researching, finding stories, knowing the history, knowing the ins and outs, and telling it to people, be it on the bus or be it in front of a group or be it on the mic in the radio studio. It is sharing the knowledge, and that's what I love.
Yeah, I think that, and helping people to see the world in a little different way. I think that's what's
Yeah.
helpful in my opinion. So you have a very different backstory than me, because you're from Berlin. So you got to see the whole transition between sort of the divided Berlin and then the united Berlin now. And there's an anniversary coming up that you told me about. Do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah. So basically what we just had, like 30 years of the wall coming down, and actually 30 years of Germany becoming united again. So that's what we kind of looked back a bit. And that was quite a strong moment, because after 30 years, it really was the question of like, so we had two separate Germanys for 40 years. From kind of 49 to 89, there was one side and the other side. And they were really, yeah, at loggerheads. They were on both sides of this Iron Curtain. And maybe, I don't know, can I share a little map with you? Let me see if I can. Can I do this actually at my point? Yeah.
But
Well,
hang
let
on,
me try if that
I'm going to
works.
give you.
Oh yeah. So I keep talking though, but really, it's so that's what it is. It's in Germany. Within Germany, it was really this idea of.
Okay, go ahead. You should be able to share now.
Yeah, and let me see. Yeah, there we go. That's the map I wanted to show you, and have a look. So if you can see that now, it's just maybe it's tricky to read the little prints, but what is important is the red and the blue. Oops. Hey, go back. The red and the blue. That's what we want, right? So you see, this is the Eastern Bloc, because Soviet Russia, the evil empire, as Mr. Reagan called it, right? And this is the free world. This is democracy. This is France. This is Britain, the heartlands of like democracy in a way. And the middle is Germany. In Germany, you see that here, right here goes the Iron Curtain. And Berlin sits right there in the middle of Eastern Germany, which is kind of half red, kind of pinkish here. So East Germany, West Germany, and in between is the Iron Curtain. And that is such a strong, feeling, a strong. So let me just go back to the Zoom. Because when I was growing up, it was the case. It was clear that basically you were on one side, the good side. I come from West Germany, right? That was where I was. And the other side was East Germany, right? And they were the baddies, if you wish. So it is something that I remember very strongly, because I grew up like very close to the border, not the wall. The wall was more or less in Berlin and encircling West Berlin, but I was in West Germany, a couple of miles from the border to East Germany. And when I was a little kid, we'd growing up, we'd go and have friends and family visiting us just for private reasons, and then we'd always make it a point to go to drive to the border and see a fence running through the rolling hills, watchtowers, floodlights, guard dogs. And to me, as a little boy, it was like, wait a minute, the hills here and the forest look the same as they do on the other side. I can see them. I can see the little village over there, which is just exactly like the village where I'm from. And I know, because that's what my parents told me, we have the same language, we share the same culture. So it's like, why is this bother there? Why can people from the other side not visit us? Because that was just, people lost their lives over years. That was the Iron Curtain. And to me, I was like, I wanted to know what is beyond, what is behind that fence. How come we as Deutschland, we have two Deutschland, two Germanys. Why are we separated? And of course, then in school, I learned about the Second World War and things being split up by the victorious allies and everything. But that was something I felt very strongly about, because I didn't quite understand this. And that actually, I think, eventually brought me into being a journalist, being into radio guy, and also maybe being a tour guide, because I wanted to know what is on the other side. And I did like workshops even as a school kid. Like back in school, I had like on the holidays, I just enlisted in some like 2-week vacation courses that just talked about what is the GDR, what is East Germany, what kind of ideology is there, and how are they different from us. And so my city, always as a young boy growing up in school, even when I was in high school, I had my thumbs out and I hitchhiked through the Eastern Zone, through the East Germany into West Berlin from my hometown. So I just tried to stop the car right at the border before they went into East Germany. And the good thing, they would have to Berlin. It was called the transit routes, right? So certain routes that would go from West Germany into West Berlin. And I just hitchhiked over, and I learned, and I had the smells, and it was great in East Germany. I wanted to understand. And for me, it was clear, this is my city. So whenever I had a chance after coming out of high school, I did a kind of a, we had a compulsory service, the army service. So I went and worked in a hospital, but after that, it was clear, Berlin. And so I lived the 1989 in November when the wall came down. I happened to be in Hamburg at the time, and we were partying the whole weekend. It was such an amazing moment that every German, it's, I think, a bit like you can ask any American, where, what did you do when you heard that Kennedy was shot? That kind of moment, right? Everyone remembers what they did at that point. Every German remembers what they did exactly when they heard the news. Die Mauer ist offen. The wall is gone. That was just because when I grew up, it was clear. Yes, that is reality. We have one Germany and another Germany. We're in two camps, and we don't really like each other. We try to somehow get along and work, and families meet maybe, but in general, they're the enemy. We're the good guys. And my friends, most of my friends now, really heartfelt friends from like 30 years on. I met them in 1990. They're from former East Germany. And of course, they heard the same about me as the guy from the West. So it is quite an interesting story how it happened, how the wall came along in 61, what happened and why. And then also for this 28 years that the wall was up, how it slowly was undermined, people tried to build tunnels, people tried to escape. I mean, it was a prison. East Germany was, people of East Germany were imprisoned by their own government because they should not run away to the West. That was the idea. And then bit by bit in the 1980s, it really is, there were cracks in the wall, slowly and surely. Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Eastern Bloc, somehow there was a lot of unrest going on, strikes, mass protests. And in the end, also the Pope has a role to play. So, that's what I want to talk on Sunday, is the way what happened in 1989 in November, when the wall came down, this eponymous moment where just like by chance, more or less by chance, the wall was coming down. And that is actually, like, if I point this direction and you walk from my home door, which is down here, you walk 2 minutes, you come to the very place where the wall first opened on Bornholmer Brücke. And that's like, still, that is the way that I take to work every day. I'll go there to the public transport station, and I know this station was closed for 28 years. It was a border checkpoint where you could not just go, you had to apply. And there was the wall, there was like, guard dogs, machine guns, the whole show. And now it's gone and we can go and travel. And that's what I want to tell the story. What happened on that very night, what kind of people were involved in bringing it down, and then what happened after 89 when Germany came together and the issues that we still face today. And I want to show you one thing, if I may.
I
Can
wanted
you
to
see
just
this?
quickly mention.
Yeah, please.
I wanted to quickly mention that for those of you who are listening to Holger right now, what he's alluding to is that he's going to do a talk on Sunday. So if you're interested in joining him on Sunday, the details are up on Guide Collective, and I'll repost them here as well. But you can have an afternoon with Holger, and he's going to tell you all about his experiences of the fall of the Berlin Wall. So go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So maybe I can, if you have a chance to see it, let me see how the lighting works. This is an original map of East Germany, Berlin, Hauptstadt der DDR, right? So it really is a map from the 1980s. And I wanted to show you briefly what it looks like. Yes, you can see a little bit green, all fine. But then you come a little bit further and you see this. So here, that's kind of where we are right now. That's kind of the former checkpoint. Here it stops. If we can somehow make it out. So here is white. Can you see that a little bit?
Right. Yeah.
It stops. So this is East Berlin. And West Berlin is not shown on this map. Basically, for East Berlin people, this did not exist. It should not exist because, hey, they wouldn't need it anyway. You never go to the West Germany, so West Berlin, it's a blank page, and that's kind of what it is. For me, East Germany was a blank page that I wanted to know more about, and for people from East Germany, just shown in this map, they had no clue about the West, and they were not told anything other than that is the bad capitalistic enemy, right? And what happened now in these 30 years that Germany comes together? And I can tell you this, whenever I'm with friends at a party, just talking, the differences, the different mindsets, they're still there. So people have a different attitude to life, and there's reasons for that. And all of that I want to talk about. And maybe as a little kind of cliffhanger for you, I would say, if you want to, if you come with me on a Sunday, I can show you and I can, tell you the story what Harry Hunter and the Pope had to do with the fall of the wall. You may not have heard of Harry Hunter before, but I tell you all about him. And he's a guy, one of those guys bringing the wall down. And that's it's not the A-team. It's something very much more, very quirky, very German, had to do with bureaucracy and the levels of government and a lot of courage by the people, basically themselves, because that is something quite overlooked all the time. 1989, the peaceful revolution was a revolution that did not come somehow from above or was approved of. It just came by more and more and more people, a momentum of people, the citizens of East Germany saying, we had enough. We're not going to be told anymore what to think, what to say, what TV to watch, or what news to believe. No, we want to go out and see the world. And I think that is a very beautiful analogy still that we can use today.
Especially today and tomorrow. Having your voice heard is, I think, the number one thing. Like, whatever your political point of view, be sure to be heard. I think that's really important. One of the things I think about when I consider my travels to Eastern Europe and Berlin when I was a young student, it was in the early 90s. And you hit the word just right. When I went to East Berlin, when I went to Budapest, when I went to any of these kind of places that were behind the Iron Curtain, gray is the right word. There was just such a strange, like they had only ever seen life in black and white. And then you go just a few feet away on the other side and everything is very colorful. And it really, that color aspect was just very striking to me, as a student. How is it now? Is there still a really big division between just the visual quality of East versus West, or has East been basically remade into something that blends in with the rest of Berlin?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, it's 30 years ago that the wall came down, and more or less the houses, the things are all renovated. But still, I was in Leipzig just a couple of days ago, and when you right into Leipzig, the outskirts, you still see some of those huge factories. You know, the GDR was like the hotbed of the Eastern Bloc kind of economic scene. I mean, they were producing a lot of good stuff, right? Because it's German engineering, East German way, but still. So the big factories were there. And of course, most of them just folded in 1989. And that's also what we're going to talk about. Not only because somehow they were not efficient enough, or they didn't produce things that people wanted on the Western market, but also because basically the West shut them down because there was a competition they didn't want anymore. So all of these things is part of the story that we have to tell about how Germany came together. So on the question, do you still see that? Yes, you do. Not so much in the inner cities. Most of things are nicely dolled up and renovated and stuff. But once in a while, you see the odd house that just looks like it's back in 1989. And that's, I think, also quite important that you have this visual reminder that yes, you could live in a house that was not painted. You still had a good life in a way, right? That's one side. The other side is, yes, like here. If I can show you something. So if we talk black and white, let's have a beautiful book. It's called Schau ins Land, Look into the Country. It's a beautiful GDR book, still coming out in the late 1980s. And if you have a little look here, this picture. Is it, let me see if I can, like this is better. Here we go. That's good. So here, that's black and white, of course, but that's kind of what it is. Like this, the smokestacks, the fumes, very few cars, and just also like pollution. A lot of pollution was there, right? So that has changed, of course, for the better. You know, there is, you know, when I came to Berlin in 1990 in winter, you would see the, like here, the lamp, you had a lamp like this, a street lamp, and you'd see it shining down the cone of the lamp just because it was so polluted by coal heating, by the little the Trabant cars, you know, East German cars that run on 50% of gasoline and oil. So kind of weird, like a lawnmower, right? That kind of thing. So really bad pollution, and that's gone. But yes, if you look closely, especially in Berlin and some parts, you can still, you go one street to the next and suddenly you feel, wow, what are these holes? Still bullet holes from the Second World War in the buildings that are not renovated yet. So yes, in the minds of the people and also in the buildings, some of this remains. The memories of the wear and tear of the time is still there.
So do you ever feel like our generation is an interesting generation because we are sort of the last generation that has seen the way the world was in the past? Does that make sense? I have that sensation so often when I'm traveling, when I think about these travels that I did to Germany and I saw Eastern Europe before things were westernized. I think about it even just in terms of Italy and how Europe really used to be very far behind United States in terms of modernization. And
yep.
we're kind of this weird generation that's like a bridge between two worlds, don't you think?
And really, as you said, because for me, growing up, there was never ever the thought that actually the wall could come down. It was clear that this is like, you know, set in stone or in cement, that we have East and West and it will stay there forever. Yes, we would have liked to open it up, but it was clear to me I would not live to see the wall go. And then, hey, boom, it happened overnight. I was like 20 and the wall just collapsed. And for East Germans, the world opened up as it much for me, because I moved as soon as I could. I moved to East Berlin. And believe me, these times in 1989, 1990, it was a wonderful wild energy and an anarchy of like an old system crumbling. And for good reasons, it did not crumble like, let's say, Romania or so, with like bloods and bullets and tanks on the street. We were lucky that in Germany, it was a peaceful revolution. It just, like, the old guard just crashed and was gone. And then, yeah, things opened up. The West took over. That's another part of the game here, of course. But it was possible for friends of mine who had not been allowed to study or go to this church or do what they wanted. Good friend of mine, she had to be, let's say, an accountant. That's what the East German states made her learn. And as soon as the wall came down, she was like 18, 19. She switched, and now she is like, she had landed a top job in a museum here in Berlin. Really, she is a wonderful and highly qualified archaeologist for Egyptian, Egyptian art. Um, because she could do it, because the wall was gone, she could follow the career that she always dreamt of as a kid, and
So
that is amazing.
hang on, go back there just a second then. So
Yeah.
you're saying that kids in East Germany didn't determine their own selection of career. The
Oh
government
no.
determined
Oh
it.
no.
Oh,
Well, like it's like an ideology. You have to believe in socialism and all of that, but also it is a completely planned economy. So every single thing is planned. From housing, you could not own, well, some people did own, but for the most part, it is rented apartments that the state allocated to you. And maybe you had to wait for like 2 or 3 or 4 years until you were eligible for another flat, where maybe one room more because you were a family growing, that kind of stuff. But also, it was clear that the ideology was the East German state, DDR, they call themselves the Arbeiter- und Bauernstaat, a state of the peasants and the workers. So let's say, for example, your parents, maybe, because of course you need doctors also in socialism, communism, people get ill. So you have doctors, you have lawyers, you have all these professions, but the kids from these professions were deemed, oh, they're bourgeois. There should not be, they should not be special. So they should do something else. And the official party line was that a, a child of, let's say, factory worker or someone else, they would have the better education, or they would get to choose the jobs. But in general, it was okay. Maybe we need 2 archaeologists or 1 Egyptologist a year for this. So we only actually train one, and it's not going to be you because you're from the wrong background. So basically, to answer your question, yes, the state determined what people could do.
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, and it really is the case that a lot of people actually, if you believed, if you're a member of a church, as Karl Marx would be quoted, religion is the opium for the people. Of course, any kind of church activity was not okay for the communist government. So if you happen to be believing in God and be Protestant or Catholic, you were not very well liked. Had problems maybe at school. You could not attend the service, depending on what era in socialism it was. It was more lenient, more open in the 1970s and 80s. But like, it was really a problem for a lot of people who maybe are, let's say, the daughter of a minister, of a priest. So they also could not just go and do the higher level education. They would just go and have to learn a different job. So it really was pretty much planned, determined, and far, far from any kind of freedom. So when 89 happened, and people my age, like most of my friends were 19, 20 years of age, they were just like out of school, and it's like, wow, we can travel, we can go see Paris, Rome, whatever we wanted. Before that, you could not, or very, very limited. If you're maybe 65, then they let you go. So it is a whole mix of like strange feelings, rules, laws that have to do with the strange fact that we had 2 Germanys with all their, ideology, and that's something that we still grapple with. Yeah. And I'm kind of happy to be in the midst of it in Berlin, and living and learning every day about the past and how it affected people.
Yeah, well, and you get to see how the past is affecting the current situation and what's going
Yeah.
on now. So, well, my goodness, we could just keep talking and talking and talking. We've
Yeah.
gone for an hour so far, so I think we need to let our audience go. But I do want to have you let people know how they can get in contact with you for your talk on Sunday, and just give me all the details. What are the
Yeah.
details on?
Right. So Sunday morning, I would say I start 7 p.m. Berlin time, which is 10 a.m.
My,
PST, no, Pacific, your time. So West Coast is 10 a.m. I think Eastern time is 1 p.m. So kind of midday-ish.
yeah.
But it's all on the Guide Collective page, and there is my email. You can basically just go there, drop me an email saying, listen, I'd like to be part of that, and then I give you all the details. You can get a Zoom link, and it's $10 per person, or per people watching there. Just basically drop me a line. You get all the information and how it's going to happen. happen, and it's easy. PayPal works, so we can work it out. But just drop me a line and we can suss it out. And you're very more than welcome to come and join me on this kind of a very roller coaster ride of like what happened in '89, what came before in the Eastern Bloc, and what happens, up until today when we look back on the 30 years of Germany coming together, Germany being one again.
Fantastic. So I think this is a really cool event. So all of you guys out there watching, if you're interested, this is sort of this is new. He's never done it before. So it's like the premiere of his talk on the fall of the Berlin Wall and East Germany. So yeah, so be sure to join him if you are interested in learning more about that. So thank you so much, Holger, for talking with me today. It's always a pleasure. You and I always have a good time. So it's wonderful to have you on. And Holger is a member of Guide Collective also. So go ahead back to Guide Collective, guide-collective.com, and you can find the information there, but I will also repost the link for on my webpage later on today. So thank you so much, Holger. We'll talk.
Thanks, Sarah, for having me. And you see, there is, yeah, now it's ready because I need to bring my little daughter to bed now. She has been reading a lot now. I said you can read, but now, genau. Sagst du nochmal Hallo und guten Abend? Genau.
Hallo.
Genau. And now, gehen wir ins Bett, no? Okay, Sarah, thanks a lot for having me. You see, I got things to do here. Very important business to attend to. And I see you soon. And yeah, stay tuned and come along on Sunday, please.
Sounds great. Thanks, Holger. Ciao.